Welcome to the KOMO Sports End Zone podcast with KOMO Sports Director Niko Tamurian and Najee Moye.
Welcome to the KOMO Sports End Zone podcast. I'm Niko Tamurian. He is Najee Moye. What's up, Najee?
What's up, Niko? And I really want to get that sound that plays before in our open as a text message ringtone. The zoom, 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 zoom.
Yeah.
I love that.
I do like that. And
Niko, how are you?
I'm good, man. You know, it's my goodness, what a year it's been since January 1. And by year, I mean 24 days. Like like basically a Seattle sports year in 3 or 4 weeks. You know, you had the Dogs in the Sugar Bowl and then the Natty. Then they lose Kalen DeBoer and get Jed Fish. The Seahawks win dramatically the last game of the year, but they don't make the playoffs. Pete Carroll and they part ways.
Amicably or not.
I don't think it was quite as amicably as the initial release made it out to be, as Pete's comments on local radio shows kind of indicated. But I also think that here's the deal. You're replacing a legend like Pete Carroll, and they're making sure they do their due diligence. From reports from the NFL that 5 candidates at least that they know about, that we know about, getting second interviews with the team. Now, generally speaking, a second interview in any walk of life is pretty darn good.
Yeah.
In this scenario, it's wow, there's a lot of guys getting second interviews. And it seems like they're taking their time, which I think is a good thing. But at some point you got to name a coach here. And I just think it's intriguing to me how long it is taking in relations to maybe some of the other searches out there. Like the Patriots did internal, cool. You know, the Chargers hiring Jim Harbaugh, that just happened. So maybe the dominoes start to fall. We'll see.
I think Harbaugh was a big domino, honestly. Like, I think, you know, given that Pete Carroll was an option, Bill Belichick also an option. I know he's had some talks with Atlanta, really, and, you know, going forward. But I think, you know, Harbaugh was a big domino because, honestly, a lot of people were talking about him leaving Michigan, and I wasn't dead sure, honestly, just given the fact that they just won the Natty. Yeah, he wants to get back to the NFL. Yes, that makes sense. But is the Chargers the right place? I'm not really sure. Now, talking about, you know, the Seahawks situation, it's like, you want to pick. No one wants to follow Bill Belichick, and also no one wants to follow Pete Carroll. And as far as like gravity, as far as someone who's been with the team for over a decade and a Super Bowl winning coach, I like what the Seahawks are doing. They're kind of taking their time. They're kind of seeing how the rest of the playoffs will, you know, shake out. Kind of seeing who. I think maybe both options actually playing in the games this weekend, or coaching games this weekend, you know, the best case scenarios, I think. I mean, there's a lot of names out there that a lot of people are like, what? One name that some people in Seattle are kind of like, oh, we know this guy. Yeah. As an option.
You're just not even saying his name at this point, are you?
It's not that I dislike it. Well, I'm talking about Dan Quinn, and, you know, he's, you know, known as a top flight defensive coordinator from the Seahawks Legion Boone years, and also was a head coach for the Atlanta Falcons for 5 years. Why am I not saying his name until just recently? Well, you want new blood, I feel like. You know, you had some conversations with the former player. We'll talk about that later. That, you know, kind of gave us a bit of insight into the whole entire locker room situation and what the team might need going forward. I think someone like Dan Quinn is a great coach, maybe not necessarily for the Seahawks because we've kind of been there and done that, you know. And I think you definitely need some new blood, honestly. What about you?
It's an interesting thing. And when we talked about this, you know, the last couple, because it's been a couple times now we've had to talk about this.
Yeah.
You know, there's something to be said for going the defensive route again with a roster that's essentially handpicked by Pete and John Schneider. But, you know, Pete's fingerprints are on that team. You're not the Carolina Panthers, you know, going whatever they were, 2-15 or whatever their final record ended up being. You know, you're a 9-8 team that missed the playoffs only because maybe you missed the field goal of the Rams or the Packers won their last game against the Bears, whatever you want to pin the blame on here. In other words, what I'm trying to say, this isn't like the complete overhaul is necessary. So you can go that route, the defensive mind. I think that's why Dan Quinn picked up momentum. You can go the route of the young offensive mind, which I think is what you're referring to with Ben Johnson out there from the Lions, who's done a masterful job.
Yep.
But for me, and this is something we're going to talk, I chatted with KJ Wright earlier this week, and we're going to play that for you in just a little bit. Something he said, it really resonated with me, and I'm going to apply it to the Lions here. Dan Campbell, who has done an amazing job with that team. He took the Lions would they go to one playoff game the last 15 years before this?
They
hadn't won one in 30 some odd years.
I'm not gonna lie. Before Dan Campbell got there, before we saw him on Hard Knocks. By the way, I watched Hard Knocks.
It was great.
It was fantastic.
Yeah.
And I was like, I watched that. And like the second I saw him on Hard Knocks with that team, I was like, they can only go up.
And what did you like about him?
And he is just a guy. First,
right?
He's
He
was down there doing like burpees with the team. Like, I mean, Pete Carroll was out throwing football with the team. Yeah, but he's just a guy's guy, honestly.
He's a leader is what I would say.
A leader, 100%.
And I think that there's a lot of different ways to lead, and that's one of them, leading by example, getting to know his guys. There's that clip that's made the rounds from Hard Knocks that was playing this week. He's like, all I think about is you guys. You're all I bleep think about trying to get you guys.
All I think about is you guys.
Like, it makes you want to like cry a little bit. And you're like, why am I crying over a coach in a football speech?
There were many times I was watching Hard Knocks and I felt like running through a full brick wall.
And that's my point. He was never a coordinator.
Right.
But he's a leader.
Former
he's
player?
A coach. And he's somebody that is just a great coach who stepped in, knew how to be a leader of men and players and an organization. And he's taken the Lions to their first playoff win in 30 years. Different situation in Seattle. But what it illustrates to me is, okay, how many times do we see that next bright coordinator get the job because they're a masterful play caller on offense or defense? And kudos, that's not easy to do. But then they don't quite make it past year 2 or 3. Look at the Chargers making a change. Look at some of these other teams. Josh McDaniels moving on, getting let go of the Raiders.
Arthur Smith.
I mean, yeah. I mean, Josh McDaniels is a great example because, he's somebody that was Belichick's guy and received so many praise. Well, it hasn't worked out a couple times now.
Well, none of Belichick's guys have really worked out. No.
But you know what?
Even from Romeo Crennel back in the day.
Let me tell you something. These guys may have backgrounds, but you ask me who some of the best head coaches were before this all went down. I would have said guys like Mike Tomlin. I would have said Pete Carroll. I would have said Dan Campbell. Those guys who just know how to lead. And obviously, Belichick was historic. I mean, he's got a defensive background. He's different. So I don't want to see a guy just necessarily because he's a great mind. I want him to be able to lead this team to the next step. Is my rant take on this.
So who are you suggesting then? So I mean,
Dan God, I skipped that. Didn't
Dan
I?
Campbell's
I'm
not
go
exactly
with Mike
available.
Vrabel. Given the names out there, Mike Vrabel.
Okay, so I like Mike Vrabel a lot too. And the thing I like about Mike Vrabel, he's a Belichick guy.
Yeah,
he did play under him. He's a former player like Dan Campbell. Former linebacker, definitely someone who knows defense. When you look at those Titans teams that Vrabel, when they're really, really good, there are teams that are going to punch you in the side of the neck consistently. Like there's a good defensive teams, and I think the Hawks could use some of that, honestly.
Yeah.
And the Hawks are also out of looking for an offensive coordinator too, because Shane Waldron is no longer there either. He's
go to the Bears. Yeah.
So I mean, you said it's not really a big giant overhaul, but I mean they're going to have to hire an OC too, Yeah.
And maybe that becomes the offensive mind route, like Johnson, Slowick, whomever.
Maybe. I mean, and you mentioned Slowick from the Texans. I honestly think that team, I would love for Slowick to stay there because that team is just going to cultivate itself into being something really, really dangerous.
How great were they
in the future? They've been so quickly. Also,
you're a resident Giants expert. What about Mike Kafka in a second interview?
Absolutely.
No, you're not in that.
No, because I think. And I kind of go back to, Dan Quinn a little bit when I say this, that, honestly, you want a coordinator to have success, be known for something, have a great offense. Ben Johnson, great offense for the Lions. I think the Giants were near the bottom of the league in many, many offensive categories, despite Daniel Jones's injuries, many categories this year. And he's a very well-respected coach around the league, as far as he's been in the league for quite a while.
Right.
There might be a reason why he hasn't been a head coach recently. So who knows? I think this name hasn't been floated out there, but I know, speaking of the Giants, I mean, we had a great defense last year. Wink Martindale.
I'm surprised his name hasn't been floated more.
Hasn't come up. He's a little bit older, but so is Belichick. And Belichick is, he's basically living in Atlanta now. But we don't know that. I don't know that. That's not true.
You never know.
You never know. But yeah, I think the days of like kind of a brainy sort of like a Kevin O'Connell type of coach, or like even like the guy who just got canned in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
Are kind of maybe not over, but like pretty close to being over.
I think that there became this fad when everybody saw how successful like Sean McVay was. A couple other guys out there too.
Yeah.
And it was like even for a time, Cliff Kingsbury before he was let go, but it became because those
Matt
guys.
LaFleur is another good,
absolutely. Yeah. And it became this thing. Oh, that's the new fad. Well, like anything in the NFL, as the players always tell us in their weekly press conferences when they're talking about another team, they're like, well, those guys drive Mercedes too. I think it's more like probably like Bentleys or something now, but that's the old term is Mercedes.
Yeah.
And the point I'm trying to make here is that the NFL is full of guys that are the best minds in football. And if there's something that's a fad or a new thing, they're going to figure it out pretty darn soon.
Yeah.
You know, and that's like even as the Seahawks defense for a brief time looked better. It was like, I was saying it would never be the Legion of Boom again because it's been teams have figured out how to play against it. I'm not saying, listen, if the Legion of Boom in their prime walked in today, they'd still be a Super Bowl contender. Right.
Yeah.
But I'm not saying that, but I think that, you know, when you have these young up and comer guys that are the big deal, it might be over now because that scheme of offense and that way of thinking is okay. We've got a way to counter it now.
Yeah. Well, I think that, you know, you're talking about the way the roster is constructed right now, that defense, the secondary.
Yeah.
Is built for the future. It's a great
second,
especially talking about the cornerbacks. I don't know what the Jamal Adams situation is going to look like going in the future, honestly, but I think that overall, I think the secondary is strong. I think when you mention guys like Dan Quinn and guys like maybe and to Mike Kafka also.
Sure.
I just don't see it. And also, I don't see the Hawks wanting to go back in time at all. The league is much different than it was in 2014.
Yeah.
Russell's not on the team, by the way.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. And the defense is much younger. It's definitely a lot quicker. I mean, it's not, and the hard hits that you saw in the Legion of Boom days are not something that
not literally
you can't even do that. Also, little side note about Dan Quinn: if you saw the Dallas Cowboys playoff game against the Green Bay Packers, you probably know why I'm also like maybe not. You know?
Well, how about this? So I gave you my guy. Who's your guy
for the head coach?
I like Mike Vrabel. Who does Najee like?
I like Mike Vrabel too. I like Ben Johnson.
Ben Johnson.
But I think. And I definitely contradicted myself because I'm like, okay, the young upstart.
But that's pretty remarkable what's happened in Detroit.
It's kind of remarkable, but I think it's because it's complimentary. You know, they've got a great DC in Aaron Glenn. He's great. You know, Dan Campbell just leads from he leads from the front and the back at the same time somehow. I like Mike Vrabel, but you haven't mentioned Mike Vrabel, so he's taken. And
you can agree on something.
No, I can't. No, I can't. I like Vrabel, but also I think Ben Johnson is a good option, though. But I think he's gonna have to maybe learn a little bit from Dan Campbell.
Yeah.
For this to work, because you know, like I said, you may have a quarterback situation in the future. You got, you've got a moderately high draft pick, top 20, I think is high. Where I'm looking at the picture of Michael Penix in the corner, it's like, this could work.
Right.
So I don't know. I think it says a lot, though, that the Hawks have not really done much interviewing or, since then. But I think the guys they want to interview, they probably can't talk to all the time right now.
Well, the guys that are still coaching can do virtual, but there's much more limitations for sure.
Yeah. Another name that's out there is Baltimore's DC, Todd Monken also.
We could just camp out at Boeing Field and see which coaches get off the plane randomly, like 7 a.m. or something.
That reminds me of Kalen DeBoer watch also.
Absolutely.
What's happening in the newsroom the day before everything.
Yeah, happened. And when Jed Fish was the rumor, it was like, well, the plane from – I always – not to get off topic of the Seahawks search, but when it became apparent that Jed Fish was the guy, and UW does this video, Troy Dannon meeting him at his house, and then let's track the plane.
Yeah.
Well, clearly the video wasn't live because the plane was already back. It was earlier in the day. But yeah, that would be kind of fun. All right, so Ben Johnson and Mike Vrabel is our pick.
Ben Johnson, but I do think though that his staff is going to be the staff that he picks is going to be so important. We're looking at a situation in Philadelphia right now that's devolving a bit.
Yeah.
You got Sirianni, a great head coach with a great roster, but it seems like there's a lot of turnover happening as far as his OC, his DC, just
craziness.
Yeah, and there's a team that kind of backtracked and buried themselves at the end of the year, and then I've never seen anything like that.
No, I thought you asked me Thanksgiving, I'm like, these guys are winning the Super Bowl.
I felt that, I felt that way at the beginning of the year, and so I think picking a staff and maybe not more important than picking the head coach, but it's almost equally important, especially since you don't have an OC. I mean, right now, and I mean, you're kind of starting from not square one, but maybe square one C.
Yeah. I'm with you on that.
Yeah.
All right. So Najee says Ben Johnson. I say Mike Vrabel. We could both be wrong.
Could both be wrong.
We know my guy KJ Wright joined me earlier this week. Let's hear what KJ has to say.
Let's talk to KJ.
Well, we're here with my guy KJ Wright, and obviously a Seahawks legend. And it's been such a crazy time with this franchise. You know, the one thing I've been joking about is that the Seattle Kraken, they had a home game on January 4th, and then they weren't home again until this past Sunday. The time they were gone, Pete Carroll's gone, Kalen DeBoer leaves UW. Like it's just everything's been flipped on its head. How crazy has this been?
It's been hard. It's been really hard, especially seeing Coach Carroll leave. We're talking 14 years of greatness, 14 years of excellence, winning a lot of football games, had a lot of fun. And we all know that everyone's time in this league will come to an end. But to see it go down like that, how quickly it went down, that was personally hard for me. And so I know he's going to come back. You know, he's going to get back some way, somehow around football. But I speak for all my teammates when I said job well done. He's going to be missed.
Absolutely. If it's weird for me and sad for me to think about the team, what's it like for you?
It's sad. It's sad for me too. We're talking when I played for him for a decade, just hearing all the stories that it gave us, all the life lessons that it gave us. So many times we should have quote unquote lost the ball games, but we fought, we battled, and we prevailed. We pulled through. We gave this city a Super Bowl parade. That's one of my favorite moments here in Seattle. And so he was the leader of that. He taught us the essence of Cover 3. He picked out the Legion of Boom.
That was KJ Wright talking, and certainly, Najee, when we look at this search and the way that it's kind of unfolded, which is by all accounts the Seahawks being thorough as heck, which I like.
Yeah.
At some point you have to hire a coach, but also I don't think you need to rush when you're replacing somebody who's there 14 years. Boy, oh boy, KJ Wright telling me earlier this week he likes Dan Quinn because that's his guy, but he also likes Mike McDonald and the Ravens. And I think that's an interesting point because, listen, Pete Carroll, as KJ mentioned, picked out every single person from the Legion of Boom, handpicked them, KJ included, and it became this masterful thing. And even Pete admitted in his farewell press conference that they kind of lost their edge a little bit, or they got maybe further and further from that as time went on. And evidenced by, they haven't won a playoff game in a few years, 2020, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, but, or maybe 2019, but at the point,
it's been too long.
It's been too long.
It's been too long. The
point is, this is a search that you have to nail.
Yeah. Well, I think also when this is a search we have to nail, and I'm happy that, the Hawks aren't kind of like, okay, well, let's replace one Hall of Famer with another one. Bill Belichick is not kind of phone call yet, But I was thinking about, the time has changed. Think about the teams that are in the playoffs right now. We're going to get into the AFC and NFC championships in a moment, and the teams that have done well throughout the whole entire year. The Legion of Boom is known as a historic level defense.
Yeah.
The Baltimore Ravens right now are a great defense, maybe not historic level. When was the last team that you can think of outside the Legion of Boom that was a team that was built on defense first, that did well in the NFL? I only
the 2000 Ravens, maybe that beat the Giants.
I'm thinking maybe the Giants teams kind of that beat the
80s.
Patriots.
Yeah,
that kind of, but that was built on like the front four, that defensive line, the linebackers that really getting out the quarterback. I'm kind of thinking, the maybe the time, the years of just like a defense first team.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about the Chiefs that have a great defense and they have Patrick Mahomes, or the Ravens that have the Lamar Jackson and a great defense. I'm talking about a team that's just like defense is our bread and butter, A1, A1A, A1B, just like number one. So I can't think. I think that's because the NFL has obviously changed massively since then.
Yeah.
I think you definitely need both a completely next level offense and defense. I think it's tough though.
It is tough.
It is tough. Yeah. Because you want both, but at the same time, it's like I think the years of having, a top flight defense be the leader of the team has kind of been done and has been done.
I think the
For
game has
years.
been so offensive.
Offensive, yes, and pass
Yeah.
happy.
And I think that when you look at it, the teams that have been the better teams lately, the Kansas City Chiefs, I'm not saying their defense is a bunch of slouches, of course not, but it's been built on that offense.
And when they had
the Rams, right?
Yeah, the Rams, and when the Chiefs had their kind of downslide at the beginning of the year, they're still playing football right now, but they had a bit of a downslide because after losing Tariq Hill, a couple years ago, and they're just kind of losing, they're not having the guys on offense. It's visible. It's a visible change. But I don't know. I think they're obviously doing a great job because they've got a great coach.
Yeah,
a longtime head coach who's in a top flight quarterback.
Yeah, and that's okay. That leads me to another interesting question. And when I talked to KJ about it, he kind of just said, I mean, listen, each coach is going to do their own thing. But you think about the Seahawks, you think about Bobby Wagner, and certainly recently Geno Smith.
Mm-hmm.
Who knows if I think Bobby would be quote unquote safer. I'm not saying Geno's a slouch. I thought Geno's been great the last 2 years. But a new coach comes in. What happens to your star players? What if he decides, I don't like Geno's quarterback play? Could trade me. We talked about this on the last week's show. Give me Justin Fields in a trade, or get me some. Well, they're going to draft Caleb Williams. So, what are they going to do with Fields, right? So
yeah,
presumably going to draft Caleb Williams. But yeah,
I don't.
So my point is, new coach comes in. What are they going to say about this Hawks personnel, especially if they're the offensive mind? Now, listen, that offense, I think, has the talent all over the place. Obviously, Tyler, DK, K9. The line is young, but it's getting better every game. But what are the chances a coach comes in there and says, these aren't my guys. I want to go this route. Jim Harbaugh going to the Chargers, number 1 or 1A, probably at the top of his list, other than the nice weather, is, I got Justin Herbert as my quarterback.
Yeah,
I can roll with this.
Yeah, exactly. And I really think, the guys that you mentioned, DK, and JSN, who they just kind of drafted, the offense it's on paper stacked. I think the move that would probably be made is the quarterback. However, I mentioned Ben Johnson, and he has helmed a great offense in Detroit with Jared Goff as the quarterback. Now, Jared Goff was the number 1 overall pick.
Yeah,
a long time ago, and he's not a guy who a lot of people would consider elite. He's not Mahomes. He's not Lamar Jackson.
Sneaky good though.
Sneaky good. But posts up great numbers. Believe me, I played against a lot of people in fantasy football this past year who had Jared Goff, and let me tell you, I did not do well against them. Jared Goff always puts up good numbers. So logically, I would be like, yeah, he'd fall. Whoever they get, they'd want to draft a quarterback because that's kind of like a tag. It's a tandem.
Yeah.
Is it necessary?
No,
probably not.
But
if Michael Penix is there,
I'm seeing more and more people trend Penix to the Hawks at 16, which I think is more fantasy than of wanting it to happen.
I've been saying that for months now.
I think that I don't know that it happens.
I don't think. Well, yeah.
I mean, I would love it if it happens. I'm a big fan of Mike on and off the field.
Do you think he goes later?
I think he goes later just simply because of the injury history. Talent-wise, I think he's better than 16. Quite frankly,
I think he's top 10.
I've never in my life seen somebody throw a deep ball like Michael Penix Jr.
I've been in awe, honestly. And
I smile thinking about it. I'm like, how on earth did this guy just perfectly pace this 60-yard pass and just perfectly put it in this right position? It's just insane to me.
It is crazy. And I think, like I said last time, sit him behind Geno Smith. Also, little parentheses. I hate to talk about those other teams. I've been doing it all night. Look at the success that the Green Bay Packers have had as quarterback since my birth, essentially.
Amazing how they pick these heir apparents years before they're ready, and they've nailed it.
But that's the thing. They pick the heir apparents years before they're ready. Aaron Rodgers sat behind Brett Favre for quite a while.
Yeah. So Jordan Love now.
Jordan Love sat behind Aaron Rodgers for quite a while. I'm not saying that whoever they draft at quarterback, if they do choose to draft a quarterback, should sit behind Geno Smith for a while. But
it's possible.
It's better than just throwing him out there day one.
Yes. And I'll add 2 points to that. Number one, I think that had Anthony Richardson, CJ Stroud, or Bryce Young, and certainly Bryce wasn't going to be there and probably not Stroud, but had one of those three been there at number 5, I think the Hawks take them.
Yeah.
And for that exact scenario you mentioned to learn under Geno Smith. The second part of that is, whereas maybe a Penix is more NFL ready at 24, regardless, I think rookie quarterbacks are way too often thrown to the wolves.
Yeah.
It is such a difference, even between the great Alabama and Georgia programs. To go from there to the NFL is just a monumental leap.
Yeah.
And I think that these guys get thrown to the wolves, and I think it's unfair. I mean, listen, like I think Zach Wilson, I'm not saying he's some elite quarterback, and I don't think he ever will be anymore, but he had a chance to probably be decent before he got just absolutely obliterated his rookie year.
He definitely got ruined, I feel like.
That's what I'm saying. The Jets ruined quarterbacks like Sam Darnold too. Like they do this.
Mark
and
Sanchez, he could have been great.
You know what I'm saying? Like, and so that's, I think, a good point. Whether it's Penix or somebody else, if the Hawks take a quarterback, they can learn under Geno, who's got 2 more years in that deal anyway.
Right.
And, even if you're not the new guys, here's the one thing about these new coaches too. If you're smart and you say you draft a rookie quarterback, don't start him right away.
So let me ask you,
build yourself some time saying like, well, and if Geno it doesn't pan out, like, wow, Geno didn't work out, we're going to try the new kid.
So let me ask you this.
Yeah.
You mentioned time. You mentioned Geno Smith has 2 years left on his deal. We're kind of living in a space where NFL coaches aren't necessarily known as having a ton of time. Now, I think when you look at the Seahawks kind of like issues, you kind of have to also start looking at the other teams in the division.
Mm-hmm.
The Cardinals are wanting to be better, obviously.
Yeah.
The Rams the Rams beat the Seahawks both times this year, and the Niners are the Niners. How much time do you think this new coach would get to kind of like, and how much time do you think they would need? I kind of bring up this because I think about Kalen DeBoer a little bit in Alabama. They extended the playoff to 12 team, and I think, and if I know Alabama football fans, the second he loses 2 games in a year, oh my goodness.
I was just saying, I always I have a point I wanted to add on yours, but with DeBoer, I always telling people, like, if he went 8-4 the rest of his life at Washington, he'd have a statue next to Don James.
Yeah.
If he does that in Alabama, he's gone in a year.
He'd gone in half a year,
you know
honestly.
What I'm saying?
If he loses 3 games in the first year.
Coaches deserve more time, just like quarterbacks deserve more time.
Right.
And I know that's like the complete opposite of the society we live in nowadays. But we talked about the quarterback issue. There's so many quarterbacks that would be better if they had that extra year to learn. Or like Geno Smith is a prime example of that, where he just needed some time.
Yeah.
And you said that, but like it took 8 years between starting gigs and then he made the Pro Bowl. Like he didn't stink that whole time. He was good. He was just in a bad situation. Did he have to mature? We know about the stuff with the Jets. Yeah. Who doesn't at 21 or whatever, however old he was.
Right.
But if he got a fair chance, right? Let's say instead of getting benched for Fitzmagic's the starter and Geno gets to learn from his Harvard brain for a couple bits. And Geno, and I'm sure Geno did learn from him.
Yeah.
Because now you look at Geno, he's picked from like all these guys he backed up, whether it's Phillip Rivers or Eli or Russ. And you see he like kind of like picked little things he liked from each guy, blended it into his own game, and suddenly he's a Pro Bowler. And he's a guy that, man, I mean, he's an NFL starter for one of the better teams in the league. Coaching perspective, I mean, I think we talked about this last week. You look at Frank Reich with the Panthers. I mean, was it really his fault halfway through the season? They had it was the craziest thing ever to me.
NFL coaches get it hard. Even before Frank Reich, I can't think of his name. Steve Wilkes was a guy that they hired right before Frank Reich. And I remember specifically his Panthers team ran amok on the Hawks defense.
Yeah,
a few years ago. And he had the interim tag, got about half the year, and just got canned. Frank Reich got canned, And after a while, if you're a player in the locker room, let's say in a Panthers locker room, you've been in the league for about 3 years, had 3 separate head coaches. What does that do?
Yeah.
What is it like? I mean, so I think if you're talking about how long head coaches get, 3-4 years, they get 2, but they should have like 5.
Yeah.
But is that coming from your fans? Is that coming from the higher ups, the change? I can speak to you as a Giants fan. We made the playoffs the first year with Brian Daboll, and we certainly did not this past year.
No.
And no one is calling for his job. Not yet, anyway.
A different organization.
In a different organization, yeah.
Yeah, but you're right, though. I mean, the Daboll went from being coach of the year to suddenly not being good? Of course not.
Right.
There's a lot of factors at play here.
Right.
And I just think that in this immediate era, the Hawks would be like, 5-2, they lose a game. People are like, fire Pete. Now, he ended up getting moved on from however you want to put
getting
it.
moved on from.
That was the delicate way, I suppose, of putting it. But it's just, it's insane to me. And it's just part of this society that we live in now. I'm not trying to say everybody out there stinks. No, of course not. But in this instant gratification of social media and all that stuff, quarterbacks and coaches and other guys are just giving up on way too soon. Geno being a prime example. Baker Mayfield being an amazing example.
Yeah. Oh my God.
I mean, I was like, to me, I mean, the Browns made the playoffs. Great. but they didn't do it with the guy they moved on from Baker with.
No.
And I was looking at this and I'm like, what are the Browns doing? Like, he was hurt. He got into the playoffs and you like trotted him out there with like a broken rib and everything else. And next thing you know, he's a journeyman, and then finally latched down with the Bucks and got, guess what, to a good situation, good coach, good weapons around him. And he takes a team to a division title.
I was thinking even before that, when Baker Mayfield got signed by the Rams, like
Right
3
after
days
Stafford.
before he was about to, right after Stafford, like 3 days before he was about to start, and he had a masterful game.
right.
A masterful game. So it just kind of shows you what environment. Jared Goff got sent to Detroit to basically end his career in that Stafford trade. And look at him now playing in the NFC Championship game, and I think he'll win, by the way.
I hope he
I
wins.
think he'll win too. And I think the whole entire city's behind you, Jared. Don't let us down.
Let's get on that point.
Yeah.
AFC, NFC championships, NFC title game, Lions
Not Rams.
taking on the Niners. The Rams lost to the Lions in the first round.
Yes.
And then the AFC, you have the Ravens and the Chiefs. I don't think we're just saying let's root for the Lions just basically because we don't like the Niners in Seattle, at least unless you're from the Bay Area. But I'd say my heart says Lions are going to win it because I want the Lions to win a Super Bowl for the first time. I think we get Lions, Ravens win it though.
Okay, so the biggest problem I have with picking the Lions, and I'm going to, is the game. The game is in San Francisco.
Yeah,
which is not a dome.
No,
we saw a electric atmosphere in Ford Field this past weekend, and let me tell you, I bet the Lions would wish they were going back there. Honestly, the Niners are respected. I like the Niners. I mean, top to bottom, the offense is fantastic. The defense is fantastic. The best linebacker in the league, in Fred Warner. Deebo Samuel is hurt. We'll see how that happens. What shakes out with that. I do think the Lions will win in a close game somehow.
Niners scare me. They're good.
They're very scary good. But
I don't want Niners Ravens again.
Okay. And I think back to the last time they played each other.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, if the Ravens are just given score wise, the Ravens were miles ahead.
Yeah.
At the time, over the Niners. And I don't want to say the Niners cursed, because I don't think that they are.
Yeah.
In the same way that Buffalo might be.
Oh my God. Wide right again.
Come on. Goodness. I'm sick for them. I don't know. I just feel like, and I could be completely wrong, and this is just a gut feeling. It's funny, if you're listening to us for a while, thank you, first of all. Second of all, Niko oftentimes thinks with his heart,
Yes.
And I'm more of a brainy guy. I do have glasses after all. And I'm like, but now I'm like, my heart, I'm it's Detroit versus everyone. So I'm leaning to the Lions. And in the AFC, I think it's gonna be Ravens.
Yeah. Ravens, I think the Ravens are the best team, and they've seen that. We've seen that. I mean, they handled the Lions, they handled the Hawks, a bunch of other teams.
They've handled a lot of good teams. Yeah.
They did.
Yeah. Then the Seahawks got a big wake up call.
Yeah.
That was kind of the first game where we kind of saw things kind of not go well for the Hawks.
Yeah.
That was and it was against the Ravens. It was in Baltimore, kind of where the Chiefs will be playing this weekend. And I think it's gonna be a 10-point game.
Yeah.
Patrick Mahomes, you don't count him out, but I mean, I'm going to.
Yeah. Well, okay. Hopefully we can celebrate a Lions Ravens prediction show next week. How's that sound?
I think that sounds great.
Well, Najee, this was fun as always, my friend.
This was great.
So Lions, Ravens, Vrabel and Johnson, make it happen, football world.
Make it happen. Just do it. Do it.
He's Najee. I'm Niko. See you next week.
Bye.